right there. And welcome everybody to another episode of the ever engaging, ever just pull you in and won't let you go content of Thursday Night Social.
Sort of on time today. Yeah, I got audio. Good. All right.
So we think that we had audio coming in. Oh, look at that. I'm pixelating again.
Yes. See, that's
So I'm
nice.
pixelating. I
Yeah.
don't know if people understand what it's like to pixelate in this world, but I'm pixelating.
There we go.
And
I guess I'll have to keep this up there. That's a
so
bummer.
pixelating. All right, so welcome to Thursday Night Social. My name is Chuck Levecchi, and over here is Tim, and he's going to jump in and kind of introduce himself in just a moment. But for those of you who have never tuned in, we are Udicci.TV, and what we do is we just get together every Thursday night, and we talk about blockchain and metaverses and new economies and being healthier together and trying to grow better tomorrows. And we invite people on who are just really interesting characters that we meet across the internet, kind of to talk about the same things, because our world is changing and it's changing pretty quickly. And we do just get together and we just let this be a free flow of conversation and just kind of like whatever's going on in our head at the time. And with that, I'll give it to Tim.
Of course.
No more
Um,
softballs. No
no
more
more
softballs.
softballs. Oh, we're past the point of softballs. Hey, listen, I'm on the fly editing, trying to make sure things are going. Yeah. So Chuck and I started this way back in 2010. We started Udici's journey back in 2010, but we're getting better at our production quality. I think it's getting a little bit more on time, and if we can just keep the content flowing, I think we'll be fine, right?
I do. And I think that we have been definitely getting better. And I think that that's thanks in part to our guests that come on each week. And we are going to have a new guest tonight, which we're kind of excited about in the 8 o'clock hour. William Barnes from, I don't know, Meta World. That's all I'm going to say at this point. Like, I'm trying to understand what this guy is doing. All I know is that he's building metaverses and more metaverses and just kind of blowing up things on the blockchain. And, those are the kinds of people we have on the show. Last week, we're very thankful to have Phil Coleman join us. For those of you who might be following the NFT world, here's another kind of superstar, not even necessarily up and rising anymore. He's just kind of everywhere they want to be in the NFT world. Now, Tim and I come at this a lot differently, though, is we're just kind of like two regular guys trying to figure out how to join this and hopefully to share the information that we're learning about blockchain and whatnot as this all goes, because we understand that a lot of people don't understand what's going on with blockchain. So about a year ago now, we stepped in and we decided that, we had this piece of software we've been working on for a decade. We've got this story that we've been working on for about a decade. And we saw that things going on with blockchain were quite something and said, we sort of need to dive in. And, that's what we're doing is we share that information and we're letting you follow along on our journey as we get ready to launch onto the BSV blockchain here in a couple of weeks. And we'll talk more about that tonight. But we have every night, every week, we have some like a theme, and our theme this week is to encourage progress. And tonight on Unencrypted, we're talking about managing the metaverse, and then our 9 o'clock segment, which is Ceox, we're talking about committing together or committed connections, and that's really about really how do we build these independent networks of people who remain committed to one another, like building those healthier communities and those healthier economies that we're doing. So all of that's tonight. And then at 9 o'clock, we jump over, I believe, I've got to check this, and we
Oh
join the
yeah,
Pirates and we talk all sorts about that. So
haven't
yeah, I'm
heard
going
from
to
them.
check.
Yeah.
I'll check on the Pirates real quick.
All right. So tonight we do have, like Chuck said, we have a guest coming on with us. We'll be talking. Do you have people with you in Ceox today, or you gonna have a Sierra with you, or
Sierra's going to be joining us at 8:30 also. So
great,
that'll be good.
great,
And
great.
let's see here. I do have
So
to.
Chuck is talking about the Peaceful Pirate Project. Our friends who, if you haven't caught us on a Thursday night yet, when we've been on with them, just kind of a general conversation about a lot of different things, including sustainable farming and a little bit of conspiracy theory, a little bit of everything that we talk about. Hence the name Thursday Night Social. It's no particular direction usually when we're with the Pirates. We're just kind of floating around with them on the when we get on with them. So
I don't see anything on their Discord as to whether they'll be joining us, but yeah, anybody who is tuning in for the first time at 9 o'clock, we joined the Peaceful Pirates Project. They're a permaculture group looking to kind of just create sustainable communities together, and they kind of plan to use blockchain to make that interconnection wherever those permacultures get set up. So they're just kind of sharing that information, and that's really what tonight is all about: is just sharing information, hopefully developing some relationships and friendships with other people, and that world. But tonight we are going to here on Unencrypted, we're going to talk about the metaverses and managing in the metaverse, which is a whole different way of thinking. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. So we're going to take a quick break, as we always do, just to kick this off, and we're going to let you gaze upon our sponsorship of Self still again. And we'll just have you bring up the Ceox holiday chat for just a minute. And while doing that, I am actually going to go fix a couple settings in the room here. So I will be right back. This is such on time format programming tonight. It's just getting there. We were supposed to come back from Ceox at 7:09, and it's 7:09.
Oh
Oh
wow!
wait.
I thought it was supposed to be 8.
Yeah, 7 or
Yeah,
9. No,
7:09.
7:09.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's when we were supposed to come back from that. So we're really good. All right, so we're going to be talking tonight about managing a metaverse, and it's kind of an interesting thing. I was listening to, really trying to wrap my head around the metaverse and what it's all about tonight. And certainly when William comes on, he's going to be able to share a lot more information around this. But I've started seeing quite a few things this week about the metaverses, and for anybody who's paying any kind of attention, you're going to start seeing that land is boy, it's in high demand, right? Whereas like NFTs are so yesterday, right? Kind of a thing. And everybody heard about NFTs last year, and it was or most of, let's say, this year, most of 2021. I think 2022 is going to be all about land in the metaverse, right? It's going to be the great rushing out west. What did they what was that thing where you claimed your land? Back in I don't know the 1800s, where they opened up the Western ride, and you went out there and you said, okay, I'm going to put a stake in the ground tonight, and this is my 20 acres or whatever that is. I don't really remember what they called that. That's what I think we're coming into in 2022 in the metaverse. And it's really, really interesting. And there's so many things to talk about. What does this mean? So tonight, what I wanted to do is really just kind of focus on what does it really look like to manage ourselves in the metaverse, to manage each other, kind of work communities together in the metaverses, and begin expanding already what it is that we think about in terms of metaverses. And I figured start out with something like this. I saw somebody who shared that some of the countries, and just let this idea run around your head for a while. And anybody who's tuning in, I hope that you would maybe share some thoughts on this. Message us. You can message us on Facebook, or certainly YouTube. If you want to jump on and join us on YouTube, you can watch. You watching YouTube, Tim?
Yep.
hopefully you're watching that one, right? Or you can go on our Signal channel and message us there. Or like I said, if anybody wants to come on and talk, just let us know and we can send you a link to get onto the stream. But here's an interesting piece about the land that's being bought in the metaverse. And not only is it going for millions of dollars, and we want you to just kind of think through what we're talking about here is that people are creating, let's call it a space on the internet that can be viewed as like three-dimensionally through maybe Oculus or some of the other virtual reality goggles that are becoming a regular gamers type thing. A lot of people have those now and more are getting those. So it's like you go into basically, let's just say a black universe, like a black background on your computer screen. If you want to imagine this, if you've not worn the VR things, but everything, let's call it black, and all of a sudden, like in front of you is a big square. And obviously not a square, but it's just kind of something that's been designed to sort of kind of look like land. And, it's been then sectioned off into plots, and you can buy a plot of land in this kind of blank metaverse. Now, it's typically not blank because others have already probably gone in ahead of you maybe and bought some things. And last week we talked about the idea how, like Atari is in the sandbox and people want to be next to Atari because they're doing cool things. And Snoop Dogg bought a big spot. So people want to be next to Snoop Dogg. So just like in real estate where it's all about location, it's really like we need to start wrapping our heads around what is this really about? Because, if I want to buy a piece of property where I could build a house, let's say on the ocean because I love the ocean, well, we get that that's location. Or if I want to create a retail shop along some like very busy street and I want people to stop in my store, well, that's a busy location. That's easy to kind of understand that at the main crossroads of any town is probably a good place for a business, and maybe someplace out in the country or like I say on the ocean or on some water is a place that a lot of people just like to relax or whatever that looks like. We can easily imagine what it means when we say that real estate's all about location when we're talking about the real world. So it's not so difficult to transfer the idea of location being to the meta world, but this is where things begin to change because, honestly, I sit here and think like, why would I want land in the meta world? And then I start to say things are like, oh, because if I'm going to want an e-commerce in the future, if I'm going to want to sell online, if I'm going to want to build a community online, I'm going to need land where other people are, and I may need to be in multiple metaverses. And once I begin to talk about getting into multiple metaverses, now I need to be able to manage all of those multiple metaverses, which is a little bit different than what we do today because if I buy a house in New York and I have these certain codes and laws that exist in New York, that's fine. If I buy another one in another state, that's a little bit different. And I have to manage those. I have to manage according to the zoning and the loads or the codes and the laws of those individual states. So that's interesting. And the same thing's going to exist in metaverses. And we have to begin to wonder, what does that really look like? So one of the things I really want to kind of talk through tonight is, first off, what does it really mean to build in the universe, in a metaverse? And then how do you begin to manage yourself, right? And we'll start there. And what I mean by yourself is, I was listening to a podcast with Mark Zuckerberg. And on that podcast, one of the things they were talking about in the metaverse was sort of like, how are you going to go about portraying your identity in the metaverse, right? And it might be as simple as just some sort of avatar, or it might be more like you're a NASCAR driver and you've got little brands stapled all over you because you're sponsored by all of these brands. So every place you walk, you're just a simple walking billboard, and that might be a thing as well. But it's this weird sort of palette that if you're going to exist in the metaverse, you kind of get to design your own identity and your own self upon the land that you can get to claim. But then you also have neighbors, and you got to figure out, do you want to play nice with the neighbors, or why are you buying in the metaverse there? So that's kind of like the big broad stroke of tonight's conversation during the first, for the next 30 minutes or so. And I figure I'm just going to let Tim kind of talk through this because I'm sure at this point he's just had 1,000 different thoughts about the metaverse at this point and what that really means and how are we going to yeah. So Tim, tell me about your world in the
So
metaverse.
I was trying to while you were talking about this, I was actually trying to call up a, metaverse map because I was trying to I wanted to see if I could pull in, just kind of a capture of that, and I thought, well, let me see if I can grab this real quick, and it's funny because as you talk about the metaverse and you think about like buying land in the metaverse or starting out at the core. We've talked about the $1 million homepage before, and we talked about how you could buy like each pixel. And when let me find this because I found a really good image of a thing that I think that would probably be kind of good. So that just to kind of give you an idea, what a metaverse map might look at like is it's just a bunch of squares in this case, and people are able to buy certain pieces on this board. So if you think of like a checkerboard and you wanted to buy one square on a checkerboard, where would you want it? Do you want to be the back corner? Do you want to be the front corner? So you kind of have a lot of decisions to make. But like you said, who are your neighbors and what is the community representing, or what are they trying to pitch, or what are they sharing, or and how do you relate to them, and why are you in that community, and then do you have multiple presence set up where you have yeah, why do you keep going that, man, that's annoying, but so oops, the metaverse inside of when you start thinking about putting yourself inside of here, it's like planting a flag inside of the inside of this map, and then staking your claim inside of this metaverse, and then being able to roam around and visit with others and see what others are doing inside of their metaverse, how they're building out their metaverse, what does it contain, what types of games, what types of interactions, what type of what types of communication they're going back and forth. So from that point, you talked about identities a little bit. Is it just your first name? Is it your avatar name, or how do you identify, and or do your friends see your real name and other people see an avatar name? So I think a lot of that is kind of open for open for capabilities that we're not limited. We're only limited by what we can think, really.
So that's kind of a fun thing that you're talking about there. And so today I was reminded of an early Nefarian that I designed, and it was featuring multi-face protocols. And I wasn't really sure what that really meant, if you will, when I first said the multi. Let's see, am I showing that multi-face protocol? Are you able to see that?
Yeah, hold on a minute, I'm getting it.
Okay, yeah. So, okay. So basically, early on, I just made this little featuring multi-phase protocols, and I was like, I don't even really know what that means. But since that since that was created, I really it gave me
Oh,
the luxury. No, go ahead, keep that up there. It gave me the luxury to start making Nefarians that really could be whatever I wanted them to be. And I was having some fun today updating one of the more recent ones that has to be done. And now he's not going to be on tonight. We did send out an invite, but I'm going to kind of share because it's just a character. But, once we got to the point of saying that, I don't know, can you see that one, Tim?
where are you sharing it?
So it should be to a, hold on, I'll come back over here and do another screen share. And Chrome tab, Winston, that one. And I'll share this one up as it presents. So you should be able to see it easier. All right, so you should be able to see Beowulf at this point.
Yeah, you should be
right?
able to see it too.
What's that?
You should be able to see it on the screen.
Okay, yeah. Okay, cool. All right, so yeah, you've got the Beowulf sitting in there. And so, one of the interesting things is I was playing with this. This is very specifically one of our friends in the marketplace will say this was designed for him a little bit after the pulp fiction side of things, but it's Beowulf. And when I was designing this, I'm like, okay, this is nothing more than a basic Nefarian, and I was able to just put a multi-phase. I was able to use the multi-phase protocol, that multi-phase
Right.
feature that I was talking about, and it occurs to me like that's sort of something that's going to be in the metaverse, right? Is that your identity itself could actually be exactly who I am or whoever I want to be, whenever I want to be. And that really does bring in something of a whole different feeling to it, if you will. It's like, who am I really? So when I want to come back, I want to talk about that, like a more reliable me. Because if we're going to create a better tomorrow together, we sort of have to understand that while we can be anybody that we want and we can change our identities, there's a little bit of a challenge in doing that. And really, what does that look like? So we're going to jump out and do another holiday Ceox chat because we're 2 minutes behind, and we're going to do that anyways. We're going to cut 1 minute off of this break, and we will be back at 7:23. Wait, I think I lost.
Nope, I'm here. Yep. Well, that is an interesting conversation. Who do you want to be? Because in a lot of ways, I think that we could be our multiple personalities. Yep. Dang it! All right, ready to come back in? We're coming back in. Oops.
Conversation continues during
Yes.
sponsorship. Like we
It,
said, highly engaging technology
what
here, highly engaging
one-sided.
content.
That was a one-sided conversation that they heard on our break.
But so just setting that up a little bit, and what I had specifically was like a more reliable me, because exactly what we were just saying and what people heard on your side is, when you're able to be whoever you want to be, and we've known about this for a while now. We know that people set up fake social media profiles. We know that people aren't really always who they are on social media. And, the other day I was having a conversation with somebody, and, the idea goes around like how I just get to be me all the time. And that's not exactly true, because we're all a little bit different. Like, I'm different with my wife than I am with Tim. I mean, it's not to say that I'm trying to be deceptive in any way. It's just that each relationship's a little bit different. That doesn't mean who I am changes. That means how I present myself, sort of, or what is presented during that time sort of changes for a little while. And when it comes into the multiverse, like, what does this really mean? Because this is a real challenging piece. And I'll tell you what gets to scaring me is how much fashion is going to play a role in all of this.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. I mean, we've already seen that with a lot of the NFTs that are out there, and a lot of the way people are already setting up the metaverses and stuff. So yeah, it really is kind of scary. The other thing that kind of bothers me a little bit is, this whole the whole thing where you can identify as something that you're not, or you can identify in a world and play in an area that maybe you normally wouldn't go in real life, and that starts to I mean, there's positive points of that, but there's also a lot of negative points about that too.
Yeah, and you've brought that up in the past, which is like,
Yep.
what do we do with the sexual slavery and the
Yeah.
criminal side of this, where it gets
Yes.
very nefarious? And that's a whole nother conversation. But what I would want people to really think about, and I'd love to really hear people's thoughts on it. So yeah, leave some comments. Is really, how will you try to be your most genuine you?
Yes.
or does that even matter to you anymore? Right? Like it may
Yeah.
not matter, and that's okay too. Um,
Yeah.
but so how do we now? One of the things we've talked about for years is accountability and and really trying to develop sort of your best character, regardless of how many times you fail. And that's what we're talking about tonight: is encouraging progress when you're not necessarily hitting on all the cylinders. Buffalo Bills. But when you're not necessarily hitting on all your cylinders, you're not putting all the points on the scoreboard, you're not hitting all those goals, all those things. Like, how do you not fall back into a trap of some sort of blame the world, and more so come in and say, okay, I'm going to be my best self, particularly in these worlds that are completely fictional anyways.
Well, that's part of the problem that I have with this is we're creating an unreality, and we're starting to. We're seeing it in society today that we're living in an unreality, and we're no longer living in the real world. We've created all of these, all of these escapes and all of these areas to get away, but yet we still seem to be getting further and further apart. So I don't know.
I think your term of unreality is actually very interesting. Um, and I think that is sort of a piece that we have to come to terms with, is what is
Yeah.
that unreality?
Well, and then two things come out of that. How do you find trust in unreality, and then how do you find a source of truth in a world of unreality?
So one of the things that comes to mind in this conversation, because a big part of what I wanted to talk about tonight was how do I create a more, again, this is about managing in the metaverse. And the first
Right,
thing,
right.
and pretty much the only thing that you can do in the metaverse, is manage myself. Now, we're going to talk
Yes.
later about trying to manage together, because we do need to grow communities that are healthy and economic and socially, and all of those other pieces. But the only thing that we can really manage, and only to a particular degree that we actually know how to interact in the metaverse, is ourself. So one of the things that comes to mind that I tend to think that could create a healthier environment may be that the first representation of self to the metaverse, or let's call it the root representation of self, somehow has an actual methodology of real world accountability. So we talked about this a little bit before. Like, you could say, yep, that's Chuck. Cheyenne, my wife, could say, yep, that's Chuck. Yep, my kids could say, yep, that's Chuck. So that there is some sort of consensus or truth
Truth.
given to
Yeah.
my identity through like I say, the consensus of other identities. Now, that's a little bit problematic because people can just start running bots and making it look that way. But
Yep.
I feel as though there is a way of creating that consensus. Now, we've got to be cautious not to get into Black Mirror type stuff here. But I think these are really honest conversations that need to be had.
Yeah. Well, like even then, you think about AI being able to create and identify for each other, and knowing that that's part of the process. Um, the more consensus you get that you're a real human, AI could start generating that far faster than human. I mean, they can outpace humankind in overnight with quantum
That
computing.
that's a very well. That actually, not even without quantum computing, you're
Yeah.
absolutely right, because right now, Facebook, Twitter, all those other ones could certainly just ramp up identities,
Yes.
give it votes from other identities that are real world, and
Yep.
then how do you go about proving? Now, there are some interesting services that I see coming out, mostly for the business world right now, where it comes down for employment, where you actually have to go in, you have to show some identification. This is
Yep.
who I am. Conceivably, we could start having retail identification outlets.
Right, right. Well, it's just like with blockchain right now. When you want to get crypto, you have to get a wallet. they need proof that you're, well, a lot of them need proof that you're a human being, so they're asking for driver's licenses or something like that. So yeah, along those lines we could do, something in similar nature, but then we get into privacy information and stuff like that, where you have to be careful how far that crosses into the metaverse.
Now, let's maybe take this for a second and dump it all in our head. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe it's the wrong approach is to prove your real world identity and instead just create fictitious identities that carry the beliefs of your real world identity, and then we don't matter, right? Because then it would almost be like your character in these various metaverses would be a representation of your own personal character to the degree that you let it, and then it wouldn't really matter about your offline identity
Sure.
or your real world identity. I don't know.
And I guess it matters, and from a point of, are you just playing games with each other, or are you actually going in and transacting business together? So
So that's kind of the second piece to this conversation that I was going to actually we got into, which is the metaverse management. Because a lot of the metaverses right now are really built around gaming, and a lot of information is kept in gaming, and that's really good. But
mm-hmm.
that's one metaverse. When
Yep.
you go between metaverses, um, in the perfect world, metaverses and blockchains are interoperable. So when I take my identity, I don't have to set up, and I don't have to use my
Mm-hmm.
how do I say this? Fortnite. I don't have one identity on Fortnite and one identity on Minecraft and one identity
Mm-hmm.
over on or profile on Facebook.
Right.
I have my identities
Right.
that unlock doors to various metaverses. Now I have
Right.
one, and all of that information that I have gathered in each individual metaverse kind of gets carried with me and in many ways becomes usable in these other
Yep.
metaverses. And if we can easily understand that in business, right? Again, going that
Yep.
idea that let's say we opened up a store in New York and we opened up a store in Florida, and it's becoming a franchise. We're going to be able to share information between those franchises, but there's going to be these different rules that go into that. Still, though, just very, very weird thinking, and
Yeah. Well, it's something that, it would simplify. It has the potential to simplify lives, yet it has the, on the very opposite spectrum, the ability and ease to completely destroy lives. So, and I think in a lot of ways how we set managing all of that up. When you take, for instance, scammers and how scammers are getting at people right now. That once you start setting up your identities and they start to track you through all your different personalities, and if that's not locked down correctly, there's a lot of information that could be garnered from that. So I think that, I kind of got off the track in my mind a little bit on that, but to me, there's a lot of aspects of managing an identity that goes across multiple profiles that there has to be a lot of security built in, and a lot of thought has to go into understanding the potential risks of creating your identities, not just in one for all metaverses, but any metaverse for any identity for any metaverse, whether it goes across them or not.
yeah, and as I pointed out earlier on Facebook, we were talking in terms of, hey, we're thinking, 7 to 10 years initially that there's going to be this massive change, the blockchain was going to happen. Then we started talking in terms of 5 to 7 years that blockchain was going to happen. Then all of a sudden, once you get into the metaverse and figure out how far it is, and we start hearing the Mark Zuckerbergs and the Bill Gateses and the people who are at the forefront of technology speaking in terms of 3 to 5 years till we're
Yeah.
all interacting in the metaverse. Make no mistake, the things we're talking about tonight are really just theoretical because it doesn't matter. It's going to happen. And
Right.
these are
Right.
more like things we have to get prepared for and
Prepared for.
understand, like, what
Yep.
are we really dealing with in this?
Yep.
And, you know, who am I going to be in this, right? And I
Yes.
think that really is sort of becoming, in other words, is this a mission field for many people? Is this a purpose for people in life, is to really go out and help people understand this wholly new world that mankind has never even like begun to participate in, and it's being thrust upon us in such a quick way that we need to get prepared. And what
Right.
does preparation look like? I really don't know. So what I'd like to do though is kind of like, we'll take our break, we'll come back at, we'll just do our one of the things I wanted to do tonight was actually just kind of do our blast off thing. So I don't know if
The
we have
flag.
that. Yeah, the flag ready to
We can
go.
come in. We
um
can come in on that after break.
Okay, yeah, and like one of the things again, how are we as individuals? How do you want to think to approach this? I mean, because this is what we're asking people to do, is to sort of claim their identity, and we're not asking you to do anything specific except for begin to build an identity, and we're going to begin on BSV, and I don't know if you heard back from Eddie or otherwise, if we'll be talking to any Cardano tonight. But basically, we're going to be looking at carrying some identities across different chains, and perhaps that will help. But yeah, so when I get back, is kind of think about like probably that point that like we really haven't put a lot of time into, but is how do you, Tim, want to build your identity on your first foray into this new world,
That's
so that
that's a loaded
down the
question.
yeah, right, no, it is. So let's go to our by the way, there were so on this Ceox thing you guys are all seeing, so the Ceox holiday chat is actually in 2 weeks. It's on December 30th, as you're seeing during the breaks here, and part of that's because we're taking off next week for the holidays. So this is going to be our last, not our last, our second to last podcast for 2021. And we're going to do the CX holiday chat, which will be quite different than what we do here. Just a bunch of friends joining in and us just kind of seeing where that conversation goes. And we really just use it to stay connected to friends in the marketplace, friends from family, that kind of stuff. So that's why we're really kind of reminding people about the Seahawks thing, is we won't be on next week, but we will be returning the week after that and having a little bit of fun. Well, isn't that fun? Our little flag that we're still waiting to put into the ground, and hopefully that will be on our. I don't know. Maybe we can do it next week or on the Ceox holiday
Yeah,
chat. I don't know,
yeah.
or
That
the week
that's what we're
after.
trying for, right? That's what we're trying for
I
next
guess
week.
not next week. The week after.
Or the week after. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be meeting with Jawe again, sending him an email tomorrow, and trying to get together with him soon. So, yeah, we're not far away.
Nice.
Not far
Nice.
away
Oh, hold on
at
a second.
all.
So I am trying to see if I can. No, it's funny. I can't tag people anymore. It's weird. Okay, I'm sure that I could tag people. All right. So, anyways, continue on with this conversation. And what tonight was about. First off, before we got into the community and the bigger vision, and stay tuned at 8 o'clock. Bringing in William Barnes, he'll really be able to give us a bigger kind of picture of what it means to build a metaverse, and I mean, because he's definitely doing that. And maybe we'll be able to talk from there on how do we build these kind of healthier cultures together. And it begins with me, which is sort of what you talked about. That was last week's theme, is that it begins with me. And it is encouraging in progress, because we are going to continue. There's nothing we can do to stop what's in front of us. There's only our ability to influence what's in front of us. And not everybody wants to influence something, and that's fine. But if we want to influence a better tomorrow, I think that we need to kind of start thinking about, then what does that mean, and what is our place in that world? So I'm going to just let Tim kind of run with this and tell the whole world how this is going to work.
Because I know. See how he does that? He puts me on the spot. This is the way it works.
I did the whole setup. I did the whole setup. I
I'm the
explained the whole
comic
thing.
sidekick.
No. You're the one with all the answers.
Yeah, right. No, that's up there. Up there. Ahead of us. Like, up. God.
Okay.
um, so, now, it's like I said, it is kind of a loaded question. How do you want to manage, how do you want to set up your identity? And, for me, I don't really know how to kind of set that up, to be honest with you, because I would want certain people to know, like, business sides of me, and other people to know, like, personal sides of me. So I'd have two different, probably more than two, but separations of accessibility into my world, so to speak. So that would probably be one of the biggest things, is to be able to identify who is kind of the inner circle, who is that kind of inclusive circle, who's the acquaintance circle, and then who's kind of falls outside those circles and gets some access, but not full access, and then maybe just the general public.
I think
so
that
that's probably
makes
where I'd
sense.
start. Yeah.
Right, that's what we're used to these days, is kind of like friends and family, business. We got LinkedIn for business, and right, and more that now that's all going to be sort of in our realm to go make
Yep.
those connections,
Yep.
and then manage those connections. And one of the first things that I'm going to think about as we're talking about this is literally managing those connections, because
Oh man.
initially interoperability is not going to be an easy thing. So we're going to need like a
Yeah.
very basic kind of relationship manager that at least allows us to know that, like William Barnes is over here. Here's a link to his identity on some other chain. And at least we can kind of
Yep.
connect through there. And, we start building credibility cross chain. But the first thing, and I think you're really kind of hitting on something there, those circles. And everywhere in those circles, there's going to be a little bit of overlap. Like obviously you're going to come
Yes.
into
Yep.
friends, and business
Yep.
partner, and
Yep.
those kinds of things. So like there's going to be an
Yep.
overlap, and I think it's in those overlaps where we're going to start seeing sort of the strengthening of bonds, which could be very helpful, right? It's not going to be the whole sphere. It's just
Right.
going to be the in common pieces where we get some real strengthening of values. And maybe that's probably the bigger thing, is maybe it's less about my own identity and more about the identity, the values. Okay, so we do see, hold on a second. I'm going to
Pirates?
really quick respond to the Pirates.
Huh.
Okay, let's see
Oh, they're
here.
meeting and they're doing their Discord tonight. Oh man, you're gonna have to fix you up again. There you go.
All right. So, anyways,
Sorry for
but
the
that's an interesting
disruption.
thing.
That's gauging content.
So maybe there's something to
So
what you're talking about here, Tim, is that like maybe our identity becomes less about self and more about alignment with value, of values.
right, well, yeah, it could be values. It also could be, and maybe this is where this kind of goes into a little bit more of. So in my mind, as you expand out of those circles, if you were to cut the like a pie, and you were to have it come from the center out, and you have different pieces of the pie where people fall in, like, maybe inside each circle you have multiple segments. Those multiple segments in my mind where the personalities, some of the personalities come out.
Yeah.
Like I'm being goofy, I'm being sarcastic, I'm being a jerk, I'm being, whatever those are. But those are where we start to, inside of those personalities, we could probably start to align some of the common characteristics or traits that we want to align with other people. So it's kind of like a glorified matchmaking system in some
Yeah,
ways.
and more of a naturalized one
Yes.
also, right? It's like
Well,
that
self-defined.
over time, those kind of traits and values would seemingly, those most healthy ones would come to the top, at which point you'd want to, if you care to be an influencer for whatever reason, and hopefully
Yeah.
it's for the good of people, not for the fashion of it. Because I really, when we were talking about the fashion part of it earlier, it kind of really started getting to me when I was listening to the Mark Zuckerberg podcast, and they were talking about the place of fashion in society. And the guy who was running the podcast brought up, he goes, it's like a Rolex watch. He says, people get a Rolex watch not to tell time. Right. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
that's
To tell
interesting. And
status.
you can, exactly.
Or
It's
to
like you
show
could
status.
argue, right? You could argue it's all about the engineering. Right. There's all those
Yeah.
things that you can justify. Right. But in the end, it's like if you really just wanted to tell time. Now, I get it. You might have wanted it to be waterproof. There's also the Swatch watch, right?
Yeah.
All those kinds
Yeah.
of things. Like there's something about that Rolex watch that speaks more than simply a functional utility feature laden piece of equipment that we were able to wear. And
Right.
and in the same way, like if you want to wear the Nike swoosh, right? Like, look,
Right.
I
Or
support Nike, and what
Apple
does that mean?
computers, or
Right.
Coca-Cola. It's branding is everywhere around us, and it's dictated kind of a message about who you are based on the products that we consume.
And I thought, it's an interesting thing now coming back to like the metaverses and the meta spaces, right? Is one of the things that you would do is if you find real value in a fashion item, a particular purse. I saw somebody post out tonight, like, I carry Chanel because I can afford to, or something like that, because she earned it, or something. Fine, fair enough. That those are the spaces that you'll go shopping in. Now, what'll be very interesting about the metaverse world is, today there may be particular value that somebody might find. I don't know that there's actually a Chanel shop, so I'm just going to go with this, but a Chanel shop on Rodeo Drive, right? Like, you may actually want to go shopping for this kind of fashion accoutrement at Rodeo Drive because it adds additional value to that. Now, what's going to be interesting is, you may want to go shopping at the Chanel shop next to Snoop Dogg, because Snoop Dogg says that I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
hanging out in the neighborhood, 50% of my time, and you would
Right.
like to connect with Snoop Dogg, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
really interesting, and it's going to have to be like, you're going to have to really question yourself, like, not for anything. I can pretty much guarantee, I haven't looked at it, but that Rolex and all these major names already are developing NFTs for the metaverses, and people are already buying those NFTs. People
Yep.
are already buying brand name clothing
Yep.
to dress their avatars.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
It's an interesting concept. And here's what, like, when I hear this, I'm like, boy, what an opportunity to just shred apart all the uselessness of previous fashion, or the valuelessness of previous fashion. But who am I to determine that, right? Like, but I think that it's a great time for us to really question, why would I put a Rolex on the arm of my avatar when I walk into the metaverse? And hey, some people are going to say, because that's going to get the attention of the other people wearing Rolexes, now be able to build my businesses better. Hold on a second. I just need to reply to, something's happening here. I need to reply to William real quick.
Okay. Is he coming on Ceox?
Yes.
Okay. Up next is Ceox at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Or that's if you're watching it live, I guess. If not,
if you're watching it,
go find it on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like, subscribe, share. You know, aren't we supposed to say all that?
I think, if not, in about 7 minutes, right? William will be on. So he should be joining us shortly. Which I don't know how far we're going to get into some of these things, but I just kind of want to close out with saying, like, what I would ask people is to really start thinking about is, what is the image, not even the image, what is the message you want to send with your identity on the in the metaverses, right? Is it that you truly want to change and make, for a better tomorrow? Is it truly, and if that is so, what are the things of today that need to be left behind, right? And I'm gonna say there's quite a few things that we need to leave behind, and now is a great time for mankind to actually maybe edit a bunch of stuff out of our lives, and maybe carry forward those things that are going to be those traits that, if we saw more of in our grandchildren, like the 2 generations out, right? If we could see more of specific traits and values represented and messaged through future generations, what would they be? What would those things be that we want to pass down, because we think that those coming after us deserve better than what we have today? And again, not everybody thinks that they do, that they think that way, and that's fine. And I would say this, then we are probably not the people you would want to connect with, right? And that's one of those things where we would look at this and say that it's actually part of our mission to prove the possibility of repurposing capitalism for the welfare of humanity. Our goal is to actually make a healthier humanity through all of this technology. And for us to say healthier means that we sort of recognize that there's probably some sicknesses and some things that need to be left behind that have been created. And I don't think it's hard to see any of that. And we don't mean to be in any way judgmental of people who don't agree with us. It just simply is who we are. And I would just challenge people to say, if you could be your best version of you, who would that be, and how would you represent that, in this new world that you get to jump into?
And how ironic that when you engage with us on Udicci platform, that one of the first things that we ask you for, besides your name and just the general stuff, is, what's your mission statement? And what's your headline? What's the headline that you want to share with everybody? So those are kind of like, to me, I think by saying that you want to be a better version of yourself, it starts by setting forth goals, which is a good way to set a goal is through identifying a mission statement.
Yeah, and truly starting to think about the idea of, like you're saying, what do I really want to commit to? Because I feel like we've really, each of us, all of us, have invested a lot into social media, And I'm going to say we haven't got much out of it as a society. I'm going to say
Yeah,
that we've
definitely
probably
not.
gotten less good than more good, right? Let's say if I were to put that on a scale right now, I think that it's an incredible technology that had incredible promise that maybe hasn't delivered on that promise yet. And we now have an opportunity to completely, maybe build off of the lessons that we wish we would have known
Yep.
back when GeoCities was just sort of happening.
Yeah.
All right, let's
The
see
the
here.
technology that was exploited for the benefit of evil versus good. It's unfortunate.
Okay.
Are we ready to end unencrypted for the evening and transition to
Yep.
Ceox?
Yep.
Thank you for joining us on Unencrypted.